Hi.
Hi.
We thought we had the waiting screen on, but we didn't.
I didn't. It's been a day. Oh.
So that's cool. You know, we're gonna get started. We were ready anyway, right?
Yeah.
All right. So this
He's the first fucking out the gate.
That's okay.
We figured it out.
I'll just trim the beginning off later.
Yep.
Hi guys, welcome to the Star Wars Hour. I'm Rich Alvarez, and this is always my faithful partner, D-Rock.
What up?
Faithful partner only on this show, nothing else.
Nothing yet.
So we're gonna talk about all things The Last Jedi. I know that we created Star Wars.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. Yeah,
Holy
exactly.
shit,
spoilers. We like to say that this show is about all things Star Wars, and it is. But obviously, The Last Jedi just came out, so we're going to be talking about that for at least this episode and probably the next couple episodes.
We'll see how far into we get on this one.
Yeah. So today is all about our spoiler review. You know, you'll see on the channel I did do a quick 3-minute non-spoiler review, because if you're not spoiling anything, you can do it in a few minutes, but if you're spoiling things, you have to go in depth on why you feel about certain things.
Yes.
So today we're gonna go basically break down this movie scene by scene and kind of cover everything on why fans might not have liked certain things, why critics like certain things, because as you guys know, there is kind of a huge divide. We just checked Rotten Tomatoes. The critics, this movie is certified fresh. The critics are giving this a 92, and
yes.
that did drop just ever so slightly. When the movie first came out, it was a 94. Now it has dropped to a 92. However, the audience score, the fans, are at 54%. So that's 92 for 50 to 54. That is one of the biggest divides on the Rotten Tomato history, and definitely the biggest divide for a Star Wars movie. So definitely some fans were not 100% okay with this movie. And now we both like this movie. We both like this movie a lot.
It was great.
But we're gonna go scene by scene and talk about it, and then at the end we're gonna give our overall thoughts on why some people might have liked this movie overall.
Yes.
All right, so Derek, you've taken extreme notes.
Yes, I have.
Let's go straight from the first scene.
We will go scene by scene, spoiler, 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 spoiler. Spoiler.
It's in the title, guys.
Spoiler.
This is the spoiler review.
Spoiler. So no excuses. No excuses. Okay. So really the introduction to this is the classic Poe Dameron stalling. They're in the Rebel transport ship, one of their primary and last. It seems like the Raddus is what it's called.
The Raddus.
The Raddus. Thank you.
Named after Admiral Raddus from Rogue One.
Yes.
Big fish guy that looks like Akbar. He's another Mon Calamari. There's another species of the Mon Calamari.
Yes. And so we really cut to the Raddus and them trying to escape what is the newly introduced dreadnought, and their massive laser cannons. Them trying to evacuate one of their last bases. So
truly, one of the best action space sequences ever in a Star Wars movie, in my opinion.
By far.
And we didn't really get a whole lot of space action in Force Awakens.
No.
We did in Rogue One.
Yes.
And, again, in case you guys didn't watch my non-spoiler review, Rogue One is still above even this movie for me. It's like Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and then Rogue One. But this movie did have really great space action, and this first scene really covered a lot of that. Absolutely.
And I think there's no question about the Dreadnought. We can actually talk a little bit about how they tie in the Battlefront 2 into that.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting.
By the way, the guy, I think he was the captain or the general, whoever was in charge of the Dreadnought, I know he only lasted for that one scene because, of course, the Dreadnought exploded. He was so awesome.
I know.
Fire on that cruiser! He had that accent,
And then just... so, that's sorry.
I was going to get into it, and then I was like, no, I'm going to go too crazy, but he was awesome.
Yes, he was fantastic. They had a lot of very good... secondary characters in this one. They have a lot of good supporting cast. It was deep, and so I think one of the major things out of there, the point you need to take is Poe Dameron. This is Poe Dameron's scene,
which is great. again, Poe Dameron, a guy that in the original script of Force Awakens, he died.
Yes.
You know, when they crashed down on Jakku and Finn thinks that he's dead, he was dead until a last-minute decision by JJ, because Oscar Isaac was like, I really want to be more in this movie. He's like, all right. So at the last minute, they kind of just wrote him in it that he comes out at the end, you know, and you know, that's why Poe was barely in the Force Awakens, because he was supposed to die. But now it's like he's been written in this movie as like one of the main characters, you know?
Yes, and I think what we're seeing here is the replacement of Han Solo.
Sort of ish, yeah.
I would argue it's not. He's not going to be a smuggler. He's not going to do all the same things that Han Solo did. But he's that same kind of character arc. He's the one that doesn't listen and just kind of goes with his gut, but always tries to make the best decisions, but kind of screws it up every once in a while. And he's a good fighter pilot, a good starfighter pilot, and all that stuff. So I think you're watching Han Solo take shape again.
And maybe, just maybe, we'll get to this a lot later, but maybe he'll be flying the Millennium Falcon in the next movie. We'll get to that in just a second. So all of my favorite parts about this opening scene, it's so much drama. This could have also been like its own 15, 20 minute, however long that opening sequence actually lasts. I think it's like 15 minutes. From the time the movie starts till we actually finally see like Finn wake up, I think that's like 15 minutes.
Yep.
This could have been its own like 15-minute Star Wars short, like just this battle, and it would have been like one of the greatest things we ever saw. It's like, oh, that was so good, and I don't think a soul would have complained about it, because you've got like, you know,
I don't think a soul is complaining about that.
No,
scene.
not at least not about that scene. Yeah. So like, because one of my favorite parts is like when Poe is going, you know, balls first into that heavy like barrage or whatever.
And they're just the big ass cannons are trying to turn and shoot him.
And he breaks, and it's like the S-foils come down, and he breaks, and his X-wings flips around, he unbrakes, shoots the two X-wings, and then he keeps speeding forward. It's like, I didn't even know an X-wing could do that.
I didn't know how to do that. Was that like emergency brake on a
I was gonna say, was that boost? I don't remember that in the game. You know, like,
I don't know if Poe's got that. Well,
actually, when the battle starts, he boosts, like, you know, it's like, oh, that's a booster in the game. You know?
We could use it.
But and by the way, the game we're talking about is the miniatures X-wing game, because, you know, well, we're super sweaty like that, so
yes, we are.
So, but that crazy maneuver, that might have just been something super unique to Poe, and I guarantee on the next expansion for the game we're talking about, we'll see something about that.
Oh, there's gonna be so many additions. If I don't see a dreadnought capital ship in this next game, or in this next release, they've made a poor choice.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
All right, bringing you back to the movie, though.
Yes.
So the scene ends, of course, with Finn waking up from his cryo sleep or his coma, whatever it was. I think it was a combination of him being injured and them just kind of like keeping him in an artificial induced coma while the
Healy juice.
Yeah, I guess they don't need bantha tanks anymore, or what? Were they? Was bantha tanks the official thing that they called them? The medical tanks?
I don't think that's what they were officially called, but the medical tanks were, I think, specific to that timeline of the Clone Wars. And if you have the same medical technology, but you're a resistance group and you don't have the money to pay for that necessarily, I think you're
Bacta.
I think you're operating off the same technology, just on a very low end scale. That's got to be it.
Yeah, so and people are like trying to actually bantha was the name of the things that the Tusken Raiders had. I mean, they sand people for slang, but yeah, I know what a bantha is, and I know that blue milk comes from banthas. I just thought that the tanks were jokingly called bantha tanks because of them. But thank you, back to tanks. Thank you, iJosh64 for correcting me.
Yes.
You know, I know these things, but sometimes I get a little confused. All right, so anyways, moving on. So
we're on the seat of our pants.
He kind of had like a mini back to tank with his little cords coming out and like liquid. Coming everywhere, and you know, and I like how Poe's like, you must have 1,000 questions. Where's Rey? He only had one question, and yeah, I guess that's I mean, that's it. We had great action. Certainly, you know, I love to see just like in Rogue One, I love to see Star Wars action that we've never seen before, and certainly this space battle definitely had that. I don't think anybody's complaining. Whoa.
If I continue.
So I don't think there's anything really to say there as far as pros and cons, because the whole thing was pros. So then let's go to the next scene. And I guess we might as well clump this all into one thing, which is really all of Rey's time spent on the island with Luke, which is arguably the thing that we were most looking forward to coming into The Last Jedi after The Force Awakens. So this whole thing kind of stems from...
Question.
What's up?
Isn't where Snoke and Ren's and Hux. Yeah, Hux conversation happened before Luke.
Oh, did you want to get into that too?
I think we just take it scene by scene, right? Doesn't that happen before they cut to Rey's meeting? Luke and Rey's meeting?
You know what? That might happen before Finn wakes up from the tank. I was just thinking because it kind of goes in from the thing. But yeah, why don't you go ahead and talk about that scene first? And so because I've got a lot to say about Luke and Rey.
There's a very specific reason I want to talk about this scene, and it's because they hinted at it in Rogue One.
Okay, cool.
Which is I really enjoyed when I found out about it. This is where you're on the Mega Class Star Destroyer Supremacy, which is Snoke's primary flagship, and this is this moment here is where you have them talk about and bring up the tracking through light speed, and I thought that was really interesting because somebody caught that there was one line said by the main protagonist in Rogue One where she whispers to herself, they have light speed tracking. Before they take the plans for the Death Star and everything else and move it forward, they were working on light speed tracking way back then.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I thought that was a very interesting tie-in. So that was just something that I thought was great. I thought that was a very good, I thought that was fair play. But who directed Rogue One? Who wrote and directed?
Rogue One was directed by Gareth Edwards.
See, I thought that was a very fun play between the directors. That he put it in there knowing that Rian Johnson, or whoever would be next, would need that.
Oh, yeah. We know that they talk because Gareth Edwards, director of Rogue One, has a small cameo in this movie, The Last Jedi, as one of the fighters on at the end.
Oh, awesome. That's fantastic. Okay, so let's get to the meat and the potatoes, Luke and Rey's meeting.
Okay. So, yeah. And we will get to a whole bunch of Kylo Ren and Snoke stuff in just a minute because
we'll go back because that's the whole other
Rey and Luke again. The whole cliffhanger. Here's your lightsaber, swirly cam. To be continued. All that stuff. So I think that this is where the beginning of the controversy and the conversation happens on this movie because I was just talking to Jackie about this the other day too. I think that this is really it for a lot of people. You enjoying The Last Jedi really depends on a few basic things. How did you feel about The Force Awakens overall? Yes. And what bothered you about The Force Awakens? And what were you looking forward to coming out of The Force? Basically, this whole thing has to do with Force Awakens.
Yes.
I truly believe that if we never even got The Force Awakens, if for some reason The Last Jedi was the first one in this new trilogy and it just was like, here it is, here's a girl going to Luke and she obviously is a potential Jedi because she has Force powers. Like, let's pretend The Force Awakens didn't happen at all. No one would have complained about this movie.
Zero people.
Nobody would have complained. The only reason that I feel that people didn't like this movie, for the people that didn't like this movie, it's because The Force Awakens set up certain expectations that maybe didn't go the way that Luke says it in the movie. This isn't going to go the way you think. And I think they set that up in the trailers and everything too to kind of set it. It's like, this isn't going to go the way you think. Because people, this about Ren, this about Snoke, this about Rey, this about Luke. And they had 2 years to kind of theorize all these things. And it didn't quite go the way that they thought. And, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. Much before, never even in the Star Wars Hour, which is I believe that JJ should not have ended Force Awakens on that cliffhanger, because when you end a movie on such a cliffhanger, it's going to set up those certain expectations.
Well, and if you're not gonna direct the next one,
if
you're not absolutely committed to directing the next one, that's a dick move.
And he wasn't. So and so he had that cliffhanger, and you could just see like the emotions as Rey's handing him the lightsaber, and an emotion on Luke's face is like, oh, that's my lightsaber, and none of those emotions really played out into the next one because Rian Johnson probably watched that cliffhanger one time. He's like, all right, I don't really care for that. Let's do something else.
Like, I hated that.
And Rian Johnson has been very vocal about, how this is his movie, his vision. He respects JJ, but he didn't really agree with 100% in The Force Awakens, and that shows throughout this entire movie, as not once, not twice, but at least 3 times there are specific things in the movie that I can't help but feel like that's an F you to JJ Abrams.
It is a clear middle finger that is just across the screen.
And this is the first one. Rey hands him the lightsaber. He finally grabs it. He looks at it for a second, gets angry, tosses it behind him. And that was where I even vocally said, I was like, that was a F you to J.J. Abrams. I said that in the theater next to Jackie next to me. I was like, that was an F you to J.J. Abrams. That's the only thing. But like, you know, but she interpreted it a little bit differently than that. She thought that was kind of like oh, I don't care about fans, you know, like, so, you know, and I think that that's how a lot of people, that is how a lot of people feel about that. They think that Rian Johnson's like, I don't care about fans, you know.
Well, that was a personal beef between 2 directors.
Yeah, so that's what I'm assuming, because again, this movie was written before Force Awakens even came out.
Yes.
So there is, and a lot of people are like, oh, he did this and this, even though we thought, it's like, remember, guys, remember, this is very important. Rian Johnson finished writing his script for Episode 8 before any fans even saw The Force Awakens. He only wrote it after he read JJ's script, and he saw like a rough cut of the movie, because he finished his script before the final cut of The Force Awakens was even out. And again, this might actually, remember Star Wars movies, the prequels and the originals, they used to come out 3 years apart. You'd get the original in 77, then Empire in 80, and Disney was trying to truncate that to try to get them maybe a year and a half. It ended up being 2 years because of delays. Yeah. But they wanted to originally space them out just like a year, be like, yeah, we've never done this before. Let's get it out like a year and a half after Force Awakens. So they tried to speedline the whole thing by having Rian Johnson finish his script. Now, depending on where you are on the spectrum of The Last Jedi, you might be like, well, maybe they should have waited so then he could see fans' reactions before, he actually wrote this thing. But I don't think anything in the movie was an FU to fans. No. I don't think he was trying to be disrespectful to fans. Rian Johnson really just wanted to make a movie that he liked, that he thought was a good Star Wars movie, and maybe a little bit was like, sticking it to you, JJ. Yeah. And you know whose fault that is? J.J. Abrams, because he's the one who didn't want to come back for 8. Only now is he like, I better come back for 9, to fix this. But
JJ, get out of here. Like, I am not a huge fan of J.J. Abrams. I will make that known right here and right now. So anything I say will have that tinge of like, I really don't like J.J. Abrams. Not necessarily as a director. Like, his movies are pretty good. Like, I've never walked out of his movies going like, that's the worst movie I've ever seen. But as a person, I think he's a dick. So one of the things that I saw in that first scene, which I immediately justified in myself, how I would feel, I'm Luke. I've shut myself off from the Force. I have no idea what's going on outside of this planet, for good reason, because I failed my sister. And you show up on my, I know who Mark Hamill thinks Luke is a character, or as a character he plays, and he's allowed to do that.
Because he also fundamentally disagreed with the direction of the movie.
But the problem is Mark, you're an amazing guy, a talented actor, all that stuff. The problem is you don't get to age. I know it's hard. You don't get to age like Luke ages. Yeah. You don't get to live with that fondness and memory of love and hope and stuff like that that you had from the movies, from filming the movies. You have to live like Luke lived, which was through turmoil and death and all of these terrible events that would lead you to have somebody show up on your island, hand you a lightsaber, and you'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you here?
And this is a very important thing to note. I completely agree within the context of the current story. Yes. And Luke, I think that Mark Hamill did accept that too, that this was the Luke of this version. But if George Lucas hadn't sold the rights, if he hadn't given up, and if he had actually made 7, 8, 9 himself, which would have kept the continuity from all the original, what is now Legends comics and books, the Thrawn trilogy and all that, then that would have never happened to Luke, and he would have stayed stoic the whole time. And I think that Luke, or Mark Hamill, because he's like, I just had lunch with George the other day. Like, they're still good friends. I think they both talk, and they both are like, man, I shouldn't have given it to Disney, And I think that it's important to note that their version of Luke is the Luke that you see in those old novels and comics and everything, where he is like this awesome guy where it doesn't matter if Mara Jade gets offed or whatever, he's still like, you know what, I have a responsibility to the Jedi. You know, that was like his whole thing.
Which
you know?
which isn't realistic, and that's
I
probably,
know,
that's
right?
probably my only complaint about a lot of the older films by George Lucas.
So that's what this is where the divide happens, because I feel strongly that Rian Johnson made a very Rian Johnson movie. He made a very human story. And a lot of people are like, oh, Luke should be larger than life and everything, and they didn't like how he's like, no, I was the legend Luke, and now I'm. It's like, but guys, that's just kind of humanity. Yeah. And maybe you want your Star Wars to be a little bit more fantasy than that, and some would argue it should, but
I don't.
But Rian Johnson wanted to make a Star Wars movie that felt more grounded and felt more like this is a true like human story, and I think that you can still have that. I don't think that we shouldn't be like, oh, it's Star Wars, it has to be this and that and that and that and that and that. And I think that I enjoyed it, and I kind of like, I love those Legends comics and books, but I really like how they did it in this movie. And you know, I know that Kathleen Kennedy's like, oh, we've already seen all this in comics and books, so we want to do something different. So I think some people have a problem with just that they had to do something different for the sake of being different.
Yes.
But because they did something different, and I was surprised by The Last Jedi, I was able to enjoy it a lot. And a lot of people argue, and I've made this argument before too, when I'm arguing against things like this, I'm just like, oh, well, you know, just because we saw, like, we read Harry Potter books and that they adapt those books and it's the same story we already read doesn't mean we're not going to enjoy them. And that's also true. But I don't think the Harry Potter movies are as good as the books. Maybe because I already knew the stories has something to do with that. I don't know. Here's my point, guys. I think The Last Jedi is a great movie. It's not just a good movie. I think The Last Jedi is a great movie.
Yes.
Now, people are like, oh, you know, because I remember I didn't like the Dark Knight trilogy by Christopher Nolan, and I said that those were great movies too, but bad Batman movies because they didn't adhere to like Batman stuff. And a lot of people are like expecting me to be like, okay, these are great movies, but not great stuff. But guess what, guys? I really think that The Last Jedi is a great movie and a good Star Wars movie because it doesn't betray certain things that we would actually really expect from these characters by just giving into the fans. And I think there's a big difference between like pleasing the fans and catering to the fans. And I think everyone for some reason was expect to be catered to, and everyone has a problem now because they weren't catered to. I really think this is very important. 20 years from now, when we have like 10 more Star Wars movies at least, I think people are going to look back at The Last Jedi and be like, wow, that was really cool. What an amazing turn of events. Because remember, guys, this isn't even the last part of this trilogy.
Well, are you ready for where all this all comes from?
I know, I keep jumping ahead of myself.
No, that's fine. But where all this comes from, like all this hate, all this raging, frothing madness comes from?
What?
It's bleed over from Battlefront 2.
Yeah, if Battlefront 2 hadn't got so much hate.
I guarantee you it's bleed over from Battlefront 2. It is an internet witch hunt against a overwhelmingly critic approved by all types of critics too. Like we're not just all the sci-fi guys, not just all the like the action movie guys. Almost everyone agrees this is a great movie.
And I think that if the critics say it's a great movie, that's a good indication that it's a good movie, and that the Star Wars fans are just kind of petty. And guys, I am the biggest. I love Star Wars more than anything else in this world, and I still love this movie. But I'm also 30 years old, and I don't know. What did you say earlier?
What?
I don't know.
What?
I guess
about what?
I guess maybe it's because I'm a filmmaker too, or at least I try to be, so I understand the process of what it means to make a movie versus just being a fanboy. I don't know.
I think it really is just this seething online hatred that just kind of goes around right now because we're not fighting each other. There's nothing going on in the streets, so there's no social justice to be mad about. So people are just going to the next thing. I've personally talked to some people who like have a violent hatred to the new Star Wars films to a point that I don't understand.
I think just the fact because Disney owns it, even though again Disney barely touches it, but you know.
I think they're not looking at Star Wars as a universe. They're looking Star Wars as a history. And if you want to tell a good story, you can always look at history because that tells a good story. But if you want to tell a good history, the original Star Wars tells a good history of the world. If you want to write a good story, you keep moving forward like they have, even though we have the differences between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Both of those are still very true Star Wars films. Yeah. And I think that would probably take us into the rest of Luke and Rey's meeting, at least for like the bulk of it, which is, and I'll just summarize it and we can pick out the points here. It's the important events were Ren and Rey's Force connection. Oh yeah. Luke's discovery of their connection, and then worry about Rey's lack of fear of the dark side. Rey discovering that Luke had shut himself off from the Force, and then Rey's visit to the dark side cavern, and then it moves into the Force Ghosts, the Temple, and then the Jedi texts.
Yeah.
So,
and I have things to say about all of those points. The last thing I want to say about what I was saying, just because I've already started that conversation, the last thing I want to say about it is you guys got to remember, and I don't blame anyone. Again, I don't hold people's opinions against them either. You're welcome to have an argument about this movie. It's fine. I'm not going to hate you unless you're one of those fans that, like, you have to have people agree with you. I don't have to have people agree with me. Now, but I think that it stems from, again, those 2 years between Force Awakens and now people built up expectations in their head. There are literally YouTube channels dedicated to Star Wars theories.
Yes, there is.
And I feel like if this was like a TV show and this movie had come out like the week after Force Awakens, people would have loved this movie.
Yeah, it would have been hype.
Except for there's that other thing, which is the 30 plus years of what you've built in your head for Luke Skywalker. So I think that there's, you have to take that into consideration too. But, it is what it is. And again, I think that
I still don't understand why they think that's so outside Luke's character.
I don't know.
At no point has he been above bitching about something.
I know, but I'm saying 20 years from now, when we have like episode 12, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you look at all the Star Wars movies as a whole, I don't think anyone's going to look back at The Last Jedi and complain about these things because they're going to see the whole story. Again, and it's because, like, remember, guys, back in 1980, fans and critics both alike complained about The Empire Strikes Back. What? You mean the farm boy that we were supposed to relate to in episode 4? Well, they didn't say episode 4. They said Star Wars because it wasn't called episode 4 yet. Yeah. They were like, you mean the farm boy that we fell in love with, Luke Skywalker, in episode... Sorry, I keep saying episode 4. In Star Wars, we were supposed to relate to him. He's the son of the most powerful Dark Lord of the universe. And then in Return of the Jedi, what? And now Leia, who's been his friend for years, is now conveniently his sister.
They kissed.
And there's the Emperor that's only been mentioned, maybe a hologram in episode in Empire Strikes Back. Now he's this huge thing. We never learned how the Emperor got to power. We never learned who the Emperor was, and he's dead.
None of that mattered.
And we're gonna get to Snoke in just a minute. Why
none of it mattered.
People complaining about his origin is kind of BS.
Yes, because literally of that right.
You guys are spoiled by the prequels now because we have all that, but we didn't have that back in the 80s.
Yes, and people just were bad.
So what I'm saying is we look so fondly of The Empire Strikes Back, and most people, me included, make it their favorite Star Wars movie. But you guys got to remember, in 1980, we didn't conveniently have the Return of the Jedi to tell us that everything was going to be okay.
Yes.
So people were freaking out when The Empire Strikes Back.
Like, what happens?
So again, I'm just saying it's going to be the same thing. People are bitching now about The Last Jedi, but after episode 9, they're going to be like, oh, I feel so good now.
That makes sense.
So guys, come on, shut up.
The Last Jedi was better. Or what'll happen is when 9 comes out, they'll be like, it was great. It was so much better than 9. J.J. Abrams needs to get out of here. Like, oh my God, it's gonna be that back and forth. It's gonna drive me nuts.
You see, I've been dealing with this my entire life. Nobody liked the Empire, and then Empire was great when Return of the Jedi came out. Then people complained about Ewoks, and then the prequels came out, and people hated Jar Jar, and then said how great Ewoks were. Yep. And then episode 2 came out, and it was so boring. Everyone's like, episode 1 is so great. And then episode 3 came out. It's like the other 2 sucked. Episode 3, and then The Force Awakens came out. Everyone's like, the prequels all sucked. And then this one comes out. It's like, oh, Disney sucks. Yep. Oh, we need George Lucas back. It's like, wait a minute. George Lucas, the guy that you complained about in the first place, even though he's the creator of the series, and then you want JJ back, even though you complained that Force Awakens was too similar, and now you're complaining that The Last Jedi is too dissimilar to Star Wars. Guys, it is time to make up your minds or shut the fuck up.
No kidding.
Sorry.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah. So.
All right, sorry, we can continue.
Do you have anything else to say?
Porgs. Sorry, I'm going to move on to the stuff in the scene now.
Did you want to hit porgs, or do you want to hit porgs on our way out of that scene? Because they don't really become an issue.
Okay, porgs on our way out. Yeah. Sorry, you. I'm going to let you lead now because I'm just ranting.
So then let me just group this one because it all kind of happens simultaneously. It's the Rey and Ren Force connection, and then Luke's role in bridging and fighting that bridge. Basically, his training of Rey. That's where we're at. And I think Luke's training of Rey, in as far as the movie goes, is a lot less significant because of the way they cut it, which we'll see in the director's cut. There will be much more. There's 3 lessons to teach you. I'm only going to show you 2 kind of thing that we ended up seeing in the movie. I think the most important event out of here was that connection between Rey and Ren, which we find out later with the whole Snoke thing. But I think that back and forth is how it got us into that next step and have that Ren both having his internal conflict and then solidifying who he's going to be. I thought the way they did that was very good. I enjoyed that a lot. I think the way they had Rey and Ren just slightly off screen, not doing any weird like paste overs or like in the same room but not really kind of thing, only doing that towards the very end, showing that the connection's growing stronger. I thought that was done fantastically, and I don't think anybody's complained about that. I have heard zero complaints. And then Luke's kind of reawakening after seeing Rey go to the dark side. I think when Rey, what they were trying to tell us by Rey going into that dark side is that she's probably the closest we're going to get to a Grey Jedi. If she's able to go down there and basically venture...
Balanced user. Again, Pablo Hidalgo has always hated the term Grey Jedi for some reason, and unfortunately he's the guy in charge of continuity.
Right.
But he's like, no, there's no such thing as Grey Jedi, no such thing. But then Dave Filoni, creator of Rebels, was like, well, actually, Ahsoka is, he's like, all right, let's just call them balanced users. Because if you're balanced, you're not really a Jedi. And I guess I understand why he doesn't like the term Grey Jedi. Yeah, great. Balanced users is fine for now, but I hope they come up with something better than balanced users.
I hope so, because that doesn't roll off the tongue. Yeah. But I think that is where we find out what Rey's role is going to be in the movies going forward.
I have to find out my role in all this.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Well, you did. Good work. You've done your job. Luke helped you get there. And then the whole scene with her in the dark side cavern and like...
Oh yeah,
that was kind of weird.
That confused everyone, and I'm so glad that it did, because everyone was confused by Luke like cutting Vader's head off, and it was Luke's face, and they never explained that in that movie either. I think that you just, as part of your Jedi trial, you have to go through what they never really explain. Is I call it like the dark side cave, like the one on Dagobah, and then this one where it's like you have to kind of experience that. And Luke kind of came out of that kind of scared and like ready to go back to being taught by Yoda, where Rey kind of came the exact opposite, was like, I need to get out of here, like
I need to go find my parents.
So
I need to go do
I
my
think
duty.
I've always interpreted that as the thing that Luke was most scared of in that Dagobah cave was he was scared of becoming Darth Vader. And when Rey does it, I think that she's just scared of like being alone. And so like when she's like there's like the 1,000 Reys, I think it's just like she's just alone with herself, and then she wanted to see her parents, and it was just her again.
It's just motivating her to leave.
Yeah.
Instead of like motivating her to turn or anything like that. I think that's a good point.
So something like that. I know it was very similar to that Dagobah thing.
Yes.
But, a little bit more Neon Genesis in there with all the, is this the me inside of me or the me inside of you? And she's like talking to Kylo Ren at the same time. So yeah, that was a bit interesting. Any other points before we move on to porks? Porks?
Yeah, dude, because isn't I believe, this is when fucking Yoda Ghost, dude.
Yoda Ghost.
Yoda Ghost.
Okay, so
I'm so happy.
I remember. Oh, you know what we didn't do? We need to look back at last week when we made all those bets, because Force Ghost was one of them.
Yeah, you definitely.
Oh, did I win? Okay, well we both. You just gave me a beer anyway, so it's all good.
Oh yeah, well there's a beer. Yeah, so actually from last week, will we learn about Rey's parents? You said no, I said yes. The jury's still out.
Because I think Kylo was lying about
and
that.
Kylo lies a lot.
We'll call that neutral.
Jury's still out. Will we see Force Ghosts? You win. Will Kylo go to the light? Yes. We both said yes.
We both said yes, and he did for maybe a second.
He did. I would argue he did. And then, will Rey go to the dark side? I said no. I got you on that one. And then, will Luke Skywalker die? We were both yes on that. And then, will Kylo die? That was a no for both of us as well. Okay. So, it sounds like we evened out.
I think we were both even, so we both had beers anyway. I think we were gonna have beers anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yep. But I was just curious about that one. So Force Ghost, I was so excited to see Yoda. I can't believe that people, again, I can sympathize with different people's opinions, but I can't stand when people get too nitpicky. Yeah. And one thing's like, it should have been Obi-Wan. And I have to admit, for like a split second, in my mind, I was like, this is so cool, but it would have been great to have Obi-Wan. But Obi-Wan, it would have been Ewan maybe with some Alec Guinness makeup on, or maybe a CG Alec Guinness. Either way, it would have been kind of weird. Yeah. And also, people forget, I know that Obi-Wan was watching Luke for 16 years, but him and Luke barely had any interaction until like that last couple of days. Luke spent at least a couple days. I think it depends on how you interpret the Empire Strikes Back. He could have been on Dagobah for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, it could have been a
or
while.
longer.
Yeah,
I think he actually spent more time with Yoda and more time training with Yoda. So I actually think it makes perfect sense that Yoda is the Force Ghost. But guys, come on. We see a Force Ghost. We are lucky to get a Force Ghost in this movie.
No kidding.
At all. So there is no justification for complaining that you wanted a different Force Ghost or more Force Ghosts. I was hoping to get Yoda, Obi-Wan, or Anakin. We got Yoda, so I'm totally good.
I think the addition of Yoda, what then happens with the destruction of the temple and the first Jedi text, from what Luke sees, I think the only Force Ghost that could have been there and made that like physical incarnation of lightning destroy a temple believable is Yoda. Yoda in all of the films is the most badass Force user you've seen. He's the guy who can take care of business at all the time. So when he returns to the Force, of course he's going to take a little bit of that power with him. So I think Yoda was the best fit. If you had Obi-Wan do that, that's not a character for Obi-Wan. Yoda's always been this kind of trickster. Like, he even makes the joke about the page turners. Page turners, they are not.
Page turners, they were not.
Yes. And so, but that's something you couldn't have Obi-Wan do.
Yeah.
His character just wouldn't allow for it. So...
you cannot destroy the Jedi Temple. You know? Yeah, Yoda's just like, I'm so old.
I'm kind of losing my mind. Like,
still as a ghost, losing his mind.
Yep.
I guess if you die as an Alzheimer's heavy Jedi, then you keep. I don't know.
Alzheimer's stays with you forever.
I'm going to say this just one more time for anybody who's coming in late, because I see Daniel Turl's comment. And once again, they are not slapping fans or theorists in the face, because once again, Rian Johnson finished writing this movie before The Force Awakens was even in theaters. Correct. So he had no time to read anybody's theories or watch any theory videos when he finished writing this movie. So he was only, if he was slapping anyone in the face, it was JJ. That's it.
It was a personal attack on JJ. Yeah, it is not. I don't understand. And this is where this is a slap in the face of theorists and all this stuff. That's where that false rage comes from, because that didn't happen.
Also, and he brings up a few other things. Guys, remember, J.J. Abrams himself, not Rian Johnson, J.J. himself said when The Force Awakens came out, Snoke is Snoke. And just everyone decided not to listen to him. You know? So
they're like, no, he's something else.
Anyways.
So let's double back, because we talked a lot about Luke and Rey's meeting, and there was kind of some shot for shot in there mixed with the Mega Class Star Destroyer, the Supremacy, Ren's bombing run on Radiss's bridge, because that does happen during that.
Oh yeah, well we have a lot to talk about that as well.
So I think we're done with Rey and Luke's time on the island.
I think
you want to bring up the Porgs real quick.
Yeah, just real quick. A lot of people were kind of iffy on whether they were or weren't going to. I admit, I already bought 4 Porgs before this movie even came out, and I was pleasantly surprised. I don't think that the Porgs overwhelm. Some people thought they might have overstepped a little bit. I actually thought the use of Porgs was really great. The only time that I could maybe consider Porgs going a little too far was maybe that shot on the bridge where Chewie's getting really frustrated as like one of them's like ripping the chair apart and one of them's like messing with like the panels and stuff. But I love the humor of that. And the Porgs are just too cute to say anything bad about it. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay, great. I'll buy 2 more Porgs.
I like Chewie's reaction. I think the way they did Porgs well was have Chewie like have this like kind of disdain for him.
Oh yeah,
like, you guys convinced me not to eat. I'm a little pissed off, and now you're tearing my ship apart. And he kind of like bats one of them off the.
You're tearing me apart, Porg.
You're tearing me apart.
And I love the little Porg when he's like stepping on the lightsaber, and the other one's like looking.
Yes,
in the
and I'm like, everybody in the theater was going.
It's so great. I think the Porgs are so cute, and we see a lot of like mother Porgs with their nests and little like baby Porgs.
And I don't think it was overwhelming. I thought it was,
which is interesting because the Porgs, they have bird-like legs, but they kind of look like little mammals. But they are born from, we see eggs, like they're born from eggs.
They're like penguins that can fly.
Yeah, I guess Skellig Island, which is the real island that they're on, was home to a lot of puffins, and so like the Porgs are kind of a nod to the puffins that are on the island that kept like squawking and ruining takes. And so they're like, why don't we just put birds in here?
Then boom, and then whenever there's a squawk, we'll just play Porgs. play Porg.
Because at least what I've heard is that the marketing department, like you see later in the movie, we see those like crystal, like
The
people,
foxes.
Foxes. Some people called them kyber foxes, but I
Yeah.
don't know if they're really made of kyber crystals. But either way, that was supposed to be like the big marketable thing. Because there was like people they just made Porgs to sell toys. But no, the foxes were actually supposed to be the big marketing thing, the big like toy selling thing. And then just Rian Johnson and Mark Hamill on the spot came up with Porgs because of the puffins on the island. So Porgs were kind of an afterthought. And then they did become the big marketing thing just because how cute they were and everything.
No kidding.
But yeah, the Porgs were kind of an afterthought overall. And I just love anything with Porgs. Okay.
Very easy
moving on to back to the battle stuff.
Yeah, so this is the one, which is another big moment. It's Ren's bombing run on the Radiss's
with this
bridge.
awesome new TIE silencer. You
Yes. And then his hesitation on pulling the trigger, followed by the death of Admiral Akbar, and then Leia's force use. And then then it moves into the Vice Admiral Holdo and all that stuff. But let's talk about the bombing run and then Leia's force use. And then if you want to bring up the death of Admiral Akbar, I thought that was really a disservice to him as a character. I thought that was kind of a cheap shot. They almost had nothing of him in the movie, and then they were like, well, boom, bombed. That kind of bugged me.
Yeah, so yeah, we keep cutting back, and yeah, what we see is did you mention how Kylo Ren was going to shoot and then he didn't?
Yeah, and then he pulled
okay.
us. Yeah, so
I kind of zoned out for a second while I was thinking of everything.
It was Ren's hesitation, and then his whatever his flanking. I don't know what they call him.
How interesting though that he decided not to shoot after killing his dad. You know, he's like he had a moment of like.
Well, this was when Ren and Rey had already established that force connection, and she was berating him for killing his father and stuff like that. And so this is like an afterthought. And this was what I was talking about last week with Rey's influence on Ren.
Perhaps
pulling him to the light side.
I mean, I've seen the movie 3 times and I can't remember for sure if, like, you're positive that connection is established before that scene.
At least once, because they connected a total of 3 times.
God, I gotta see it a 4th time. But man, okay, so maybe that's true. But I thought maybe it's just because, like, after he got scolded so hard by Snoke, he's starting just to have second thoughts about the whole thing. You know, that could also be maybe a thing in there too. It's like that, and then that combined with talking to Rey, I think, because like she's trying to pull him back. Who knows? Either way, Leia gets sucked out of the bridge, and all of the command dies, including Admiral Akbar. Yep. And yeah, like you said, it's kind of just like everybody died, including Admiral Akbar, and we have to feel bad about it. Like,
yeah, and we're like why did he have to be on the bridge?
Like that.
You could have had him in the medical bay or something.
Like, I'm like that death should have been built up and more sad than Han Solo.
Yeah, no kidding. Agreed.
But again, I love Admiral Akbar. I mean, at least they mentioned him. Yeah. I wish that there could have been more there.
There so easily could have been. That was upsetting.
Right. I guess now we can talk about Leia's death, not death,
which is apparently a bigger fucking issue than Mark Hamill throwing the lightsaber.
Yeah, it is. It is probably the most controversial thing in the movie. And it's funny. The 3rd time I watched this movie, I saw it with my parents, and I was like, okay, you guys remember that like Leia is Luke's sister?
Yeah, like,
she's the daughter of Vader. She has the Force, but it's been kind of like she's barely used it. She's only really used it to like sense other people. Yeah. Like when Han died, she felt it. I was like, but don't be surprised if like all of a sudden she's able to do something really cool in this movie. And I really built it up for them, and they were like, oh yeah, cool. You know, like they didn't care. And that should be the case for most fans too, especially since Kanan in the Rebel series literally did this exact same thing over a year ago, you know? And in the comics, people have used the Force to go back onto the bridge after blowing up. This is not that uncommon for people with the Force to use it to survive in space for a few seconds to get back into their ships. And Leia does exactly that. I think some people have said, yeah, I get it, but it just looked corny. It's like, well, if it looked corny to you, then I mean, like, are you watching the same series I am?
Right?
How many corny things are in Star Wars?
Well, how can you say that the movies aren't holding up to the original and then say that it was too corny? Like, everything in Star Wars is corny.
I mean, guys, guys, sand is
sand is coarse and dry or
gets
whatever
everywhere.
It says. Yeah, it gets everywhere. God damn it.
God, in the same series where literally that is said, you have no right to complain about Leia floating through space, okay?
That's too true. I mean, that's probably my issue. That is my main issue with the complaints that you've seen about the movie. Is the complaints from the movie aren't rooted in any type of like logic or understanding of the Star Wars films or cinematography in general. They're just like knee-jerk reactions to them being butthurt about something. And I think that does a disservice to how they're going to make the next film. You're going to watch... I don't think I'm going to end up liking the next film, which is a bummer, because I hope nobody listens to the fan service on this one and does some freaky reshoots and has not as many jokes.
We're going to get to episode 9 at the end because I do have a lot to say of what to expect. But as far as this whole thing goes with Leia, I think that it was fine for me. I actually like fanboyed out during this moment. I was like, oh, so cool. Yeah, she's finally doing it. Yeah. She's doing it. And they had the Leia theme. I was like, you know, I was totally okay with that. And then when I heard later that like people didn't like it, I was like, what? Come on. Like we finally saw Leia do something really cool.
Well, stuff that had been saved exclusively for the comics, her using her yellow lightsaber, all of this extended canon about her extreme force ability, we finally got to see. This is the first time we've ever seen it in the films. Yeah, it's upsetting.
I mean, I guess for some people were saying, oh, we would have liked to have seen her use the Force in a more conventional way. It's like, in a more conventional way? It's like, you really just want to see, like, Leia just, like, lift something up? Like, how boring. Yeah. How boring. I'm glad that she did something we never saw in a Star Wars movie before. Come on, guys.
Yeah, if she's going to do something, she's got to do it right.
Yeah, whatever.
So let's move past it, because this'll probably...
We can have a whole conversation just about that moment.
Yes. Because we're at 45 minutes, so I'm going to bring up...
Oh, shoot. Really feels like I'm going for like 2.
We're going to end up having to do this in like 2 or 3 segments.
Shoot.
But I want to bring up this one because I think this is the only thing in the movie that you cannot justify and you did not understand why they did it. Because that's next.
Okay.
So they blow up the bridge. They start rocketing forward. They're trying to get away. Vice Admiral Holdo's in charge. Poe's demoted and super butthurt. And comes up with the plan, the secret subplot of Poe, Finn, BB-8, and Rose Tico, who were kind of vaguely introduced to as the sister of the gal who was on the bomber who got blown up.
Yes.
And their really convoluted method for getting onto the ship in order to disable the lightspeed tracker for a minute, where they end up going to... I forget the
Canto
name.
Bite is the name of
the
planet.
They end up going to Canto Bite and meet up with Slicer, who's only known by DJ.
Because he says, don't join.
Yes.
Don't join. It's Benicio del Toro.
Yes.
Which I thought he was kind
of
I thought he was kind of a cool character.
Yeah.
But that entire, if you think about it,
my God,
they don't accomplish what they set out to do. And Admiral Holdo, if she had just told... Poe her plan from the beginning, then that whole subplot is unnecessary.
Yeah.
She's because they're like, by the way, she was doing it the whole time because she knew about the track. It's like, why wouldn't she share that information with Poe? Why wouldn't she tell Poe that was her plan? It could have. And my whole thing is like, I guess they just needed Finn to do something in the movie.
No, I don't even think it's
Why couldn't he just stay in a coma the whole time? It would have been fine if he woke up at the end and then did his stuff that he did on what's the planet at the end? The last planet.
I wrote it down.
Oh, I can't remember.
In the abandoned mine, Craft.
Crate.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, if Finn just woke up right before the crate stuff, and I think the only reason why he didn't wake up is because then you have Leia in a coma, then they would have been in comas at the same time, but maybe Leia shouldn't have been in a coma, and I have more stuff to say about Leia later, but anyways, this whole subplot could have, and then we get Phasma. I did think that everything on the ship, like with the stormtroopers and the blowing up and the Phasma battle, that was all cool, except it's BS again because Phasma dies again.
Why did they bring her back for her to die the same way?
Oh, don't worry, guys. Phasma's going to have a way bigger part in episode 8.
She had
less of a part.
I had no idea that could have been anybody in the Phasma suit until they showed that one cracked helmet in her eye. Now, this was my crazy-ass conspiracy theory, which we could save, or I'll mention it briefly and I'll talk about it in greater detail later. That's our hint that the clones are coming back. That's our hint. She's the test case.
Yeah, if they bring back, like, a platoon of Phasmas in the next one, it's like, oh, that wasn't even the same Phasma as the first one. That'll be the saving grace.
That's my thought. So, okay, but we'll talk about that when we do our predictions, which will be after like 4 of these episodes.
Oh, jeez.
And so, yeah, that whole subplot, which I think was only to introduce Rose and have Finn do something. I think and maybe they're planning on Benicio del Toro having a bigger role coming up. Like maybe he'll end up being this kind of like rogue arms dealer who like kind of helps and kind of doesn't, like almost like a nicer Jabba the Hutt, where he like kind of dabbles in and out of like all things. Maybe he's gonna take kind of that spot. If we don't ever see him again, I think it would be zero loss. I don't know what they plan on having him do that's going to make this subplot worth it. I think that added about 30 minutes of stuff we didn't need to see, other than make Finn do something, introduce Rose, and have Phasma die again.
Yeah.
I have nothing else to say about that.
Okay, here we go. There's nothing else.
Because we're going to stop.
Again, we could have a whole segment all about our problems with Canto Bight stuff.
Yeah.
And we probably will eventually, because we got week after week.
Yes,
so
we do.
We will have an episode dedicated to how crappy the Canto Bight stuff was, but some other time, because we go way too deep on it.
Yeah, because we are at 50 minutes, and Rich did not introduce this again, because we always forget. Send in your questions. Now's your time for questions. Right now. What I should have said sooner was save your questions for the end, but now it's the end. So questions, lots of them. And if you really want me to answer your question, even if it's fucking stupid, use the super chat. I remember the name of it. Use super chat if you really want us to answer it. Otherwise, I'm going to give you guys another minute of me ranting in order to get a good question up there. And if it's not a good question about something we've talked about, then I'm not going to answer it.
The Nintendo Man 64 asks something that we might have to save for another episode, because that is one of the plot holes of the movie. If Luke didn't want to be found, why did he leave a map to where he was? He said he came there to die, so it's confusing.
Oh, I saw this before, and I want to give him credit. I think it was iJosh said simply, in case of an emergency. Which, if you want to, like, get back to Luke's character and, like, staying true to Luke, that's a very Luke thing to do.
I think that, for me personally, with the whole map thing, I think, and again, the real answer is, JJ had his opinion of the way things should go.
Yeah.
Rian Johnson had a completely different way of how he thought it should go. And again, I know that people are kind of disappointed by those differences, but again, we have no one to blame actually, but J.J. Abrams, because if he really wanted to like have everything that he said,
he should have done.
He should have just
episode
done it
8
himself. So,
but he got all buttered.
And he needed
a break.
This might come as a surprise to some people, but I definitely feel this as a filmmaker. If I'm going in to make a sequel to something, I'm not just going to be like, hey, give me all of your notes so that I can make exactly what you want to make. I'm going to be like, okay, that was a cool movie, but here's my take on it. Here's what I'm going to do to make this my movie. I'm not going to just, so I don't blame Rian Johnson at all. Rian Johnson made a Rian Johnson movie. If you want to blame someone, blame J.J. Abrams.
Yes. And actually, we have another one here, which I think, because it's great on topic. Good work, guys. Gren YT says, I was reading on a wiki, and it sounds like it was a map. It wasn't a map to Luke, but a map to the first Jedi Temple.
Oh, yeah.
Which they then brought up, where would he be? In some, I forget how they brought it up, but in the Force Awakens, they brought up something about him wanting to find the Last Jedi Temple.
Yeah, like he made that map so that he could find the Last Jedi Temple, and then R2 and BB just kind of clone that, and then that's what we see. It wasn't necessarily, because I don't think...
It wasn't him leaving a trail of breadcrumbs.
Did they ever actually say that Luke made that map for them to find him?
No.
I don't think so.
Nowhere was that said. Other than the weird Battlefront...
Well, he found that
compass,
but I think that's what led him to that Jedi Temple. I don't think that's necessarily...
And then he made the map, so he knows where that is, and then he decided to banish himself back there after failing to raise Ren.
All I can say that is, if the original intent was that Luke left that so people could find him, then it just kind of harkens back to the whole thing of like, why wouldn't he just tell Leia where he was then, if he really wanted everyone to find him, So
yeah, because he didn't, because he was ashamed.
I think if you kind of get past all the nitty-gritty stuff, at the end of the day, even in The Force Awakens, I don't think that Luke really wanted anyone to find him, or he would have explicitly said where he was to at least Leia.
Or he would have just shown up. We saw he could project himself, a visible, tangible version of himself.
Because a lot of people, during The Force Awakens, remember, people had complaints during The Force Awakens, too, really, hey, how come Luke didn't show up after Han died, or how come Luke... They explained that really beautifully in this movie. He actually closed himself off from the Force when he thought he was a failure, But then people don't accept that Luke's a failure, so they can't...
Everybody fails. Okay, moving on, because we're going to dive too far back into the movie. Side note, we will be picking up the movie next week at Ren Rey and Snoke's meeting.
Okay, yeah, we'll
'Cause
talk
that's
all
up
about
next-
that Rey, Ren,
next
and
week.
Snoke meetup next week.
So that's huge. That's gonna be like 45 minutes in itself. We did have one here that I kind of liked, which I think the answer is editing. It's AstroCal 100. Luke said he was afraid of Rey's dark side, but then all of a sudden he's like, lesson number 2. And from what we had heard, there were actually 3 lessons filmed, shot, and in the final, or in the first cut.
Yeah, people, maybe you guys don't realize this, but usually a movie is edited down for, like, and actually Disney, again, Disney doesn't have complete control. If they did, this movie would have been under 2 hours long. Instead, Lucasfilm was like, nah, it's going to be 2.5 hours long. But that was because Rian Johnson's first cut of this movie was something like 3.5 hours long. So Luke actually did give Rey 3 lessons. They cut out lesson 3 completely, which according to Daisy Ridley was disheartening for her, because she said that lesson 3 was like the most emotional part of the entire film. So it's kind of interesting that they would cut that out, I guess, again, but from an editing point of view, maybe the editor and Rian Johnson were like, you know what, this is a really important scene, but if we have this, then it cuts out the emotional impact of this thing.
Yeah, it takes up too much time.
You guys don't know. Certainly, if you follow my channel and you watch things like Stupid Mario Legacy, guys, I cut out like 30 minutes out of that movie too, and there was like 1 or 2 things, like maybe with the darkness, that I cut out because it ruined the impact of other things. Sometimes you just have to cut out really great things to make other things in the movie that are supposed to be better. And it's just because that's the way editing works. There's all this pacing, editing, although I did complain in my normal review for this movie that I thought pacing was off a little bit, so maybe they didn't do the most perfect job. But that's how they justified it, guys, so that's the answer we got.
You said you had some issues with the cuts.
Mostly I just wish that the whole Canto Bight thing was cut out. I think they could have
I think yeah, because it was Star Wars battles, getting bombed, like real quick decisions, making choices, hard decisions, and Canto Bight.
Yeah, I don't know. What the fuck? I wasn't there in the editing room, so of course I'll never know. But if it was up to me, I would have cut out all that Canto Bight stuff and then put in lesson number 3 to make a better Rey and Luke story. But they were like,
I wonder if when you watch that, or where they sat down and they watched that version of it and they didn't have that in there, because I'm sure they cut a version and they watched that. I wonder if it was too next thing, and you went the whole movie without a moment of like relax. So then when you get to the next scene, which was huge, the final space battle, that didn't have as big of an impact because all you'd been seeing the whole time is bombing. It might have been something like that.
Yeah, and like the last thing that I want to say, we'll answer a couple more questions, but the last thing I want to say before, because I know we'll talk in future weeks, but the last thing I want to say about this movie specifically is that I know that it didn't please everyone, but I really thought this was a great Star Wars movie.
Yeah, no,
really thought it was good.
Me too, absolutely. I have to see it again. I'm just trying to find the time so I can go see it again.
More questions.
And then, so I'm only gonna bring this up. Will 4, WLL4, you're gonna have to watch the beginning of it again because 3 of your questions were answered, which is totally fine. We just already talked about it in like 10-12 minute detail.
Yeah.
So we'll send that back there. And then Nintendo Man, we will get to that either next week or the week after. You're asking about the kid with the broom. Everything we're talking about is before Rey, Snoke, and Ren's meeting. So we're talking to everything about the introduction of the Dreadnought to Poe Dameron's sassy talk to General Husk, the Ren's bombing of the Raddus, Luke and Rey's meeting, Yoda ghosts, their Force link, all of that stuff, up to the subplot of BB-8 and Finn and Rose and Poe.
And also next week, if we have time, maybe a week after, I do want to talk a little bit more about Carrie Fisher and how this movie was filmed before she died. Yes. And she, as you guys know, she lives in the movie. And after she died, they decided not to kill her in the movie. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of that decision. And, should they have killed her off? Should they have not killed her off? Because it's certainly a burden for making episode 9 now. Is like, well, what are we going to do? So we'll talk all about that in future weeks. But anyways,
and we can talk. Let's touch.
I think we can answer one more question.
Let's answer one more question. I want one more good question from you guys. Make it good. And in the meantime, I'm going to bring this up to Rich. This is Daniel Tierley saying R2-D2 playing the old video of Princess Leia from A New Hope really tugged at my emotional strings. A really touching scene. I thought that was great.
That was awesome.
I thought that was a very good scene, and they incorporated it very well.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I thought that was good. So, but unless there's another question in the next 10 seconds,
and that's it.
I think that's it.
So remember, guys, the Jedi, the whole point of the prequels, because I was paying attention, was that the Jedis got it all wrong.
Yes.
They were blinded by the dark side because they didn't accept any part of it. And bringing balance to the Force means finding neutrality, not kill all the Sith, like some people are so passionately opinionated on.
No kidding.
Balance means real balance. No Sith, no Jedi. And Luke, even though he's very cynical, and maybe some of what he says is coming from a darker place, he's not incorrect.
Yes.
Balance really means no Jedi, no Sith. Everyone needs to just find the moderate, and you know, everything, as they say, everything in moderation. That's true balance, guys. That's all I want to say. You agree? Good.
I do agree. And then Nintendo Man, save those questions for next week, because those are great questions just for next week. And then real quick, last thing, who's your favorite character
in this movie?
Yes.
Ooh, I think my favorite character in this movie had to be probably still Luke. Even though people don't like Luke in this movie, he's still my favorite, just because he's just like, see you around, kid, winky face, you know, like.
Yeah. Holdo, and I will answer why later. Holdo. Oh my god, hold the door. Holdo.
Hold the door.
Hold the door. Oh my god.
Broom
okay.
kid.
But with that, you guys, we will be back again next week to finish up, hopefully, or get close to, our spoilerific review of Star Wars The Last Jedi. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and we will see you guys next week.
All right, guys. Bye.